Yeah, take over from what the exiting shelter area, just convert it with a few things. That's what we actually asked them those questions. I asked them.
We can get built across the alley. Across the alley, because it should be on the stuff. We can build separately, but not together.
All right, we'll get started at 1 o'clock, please. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending this press conference. With me today are Yellowstone County Attorney Scott Twito and United States Attorney for the District of Montana, Jesse Laslovich. Certainly not requisite that they appear at a Billings Police Department briefing, but I think it just goes to underscore the support that we have from other agencies, and specifically both Scott's and Jesse's, which I very much appreciate. Thank you for being here. Also in attendance today, we have Deputy Mayor Boyette, Councilmember Kennedy, Chris Kukulski, City Administrator, and the Assistant Kevin Iflin in the back there. So the purpose of this conference is to circle back on recent incidents of violent crime and highlight some investigative efforts, recognize commensurate arrests, and provide violent crime statistics from last year. Be advised that I'll not be talking about all homicides in 2023, only 4 of the 5 that took place over a period spanning 10 days between October and November last year. And additionally, I will address one from late in 2022. Investigations revealed that each case was unique, yet similar. None of these cases were related. Most involved juveniles, all involved weapons, and frankly, it made 2023 a historic and tragic year. Going into June of 2023, we at the police department and our partners knew that instances of juvenile crime were increasing and that the age of our offenders was decreasing. The incidents that I will refer to today, of the juveniles that were present, the average age was 15 and a half years old. And when you add the few adults, brought the age up to 18. So we have youthful offenders in these specific incidents. We also know that indications of increased gang presence were becoming more prevalent, and the department took proactive steps to counter that back in June. Unfortunately, and despite our efforts, acute violence broke out. But thanks to the unwavering dedication, professionalism, and collaborative efforts of our officers, detectives, and law enforcement partners, we were able to make numerous arrests. I'm going to refer to the slides now. So the first case that we would like to talk about is the one that took place in 22, took place at Barry's Cherries at the Carnival. You can see the individuals that were arrested in that case. This is being handled by Scott Twito's office. What I want to highlight is the work that went into closing this case. Specifically, 30 search warrants were executed. There was a 6-week shooting reconstruction process that took place. Detectives seized and analyzed 56 phones and digital devices. Detectives reviewed 36 Instagram pages which contained over 100,000 photos and text messages. They identified 75 gang members or those with claiming gang affiliation. We want to recognize the significant impact and help we got from our partners, Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office, the Concord Police Department, obviously we were multi-state, Yellowstone County Attorney's Office, Youth Services Center, Child Protective Services, ATF, and FBI. All instrumental in getting a prosecutable case to Scott's office. Second is the tragic shooting that took place on Pauley Drive. That case was quickly resolved. through the work of responding officers and follow-up investigation by detectives. 12 search warrants were conducted there in a short period of time, and 21 interviews. And again, we were able to make arrests very quickly. Shooting on North 17th. Massive law enforcement response to that incident. In all told, 74 Billings police officers had some involvement, whether it was first responders, detectives, SWAT, hostage, or any follow-up work. We were working 2 scenes simultaneously. 15 search warrants were issued. We ran into uncooperative and deceptive witnesses, which hindered the investigation. There was some out-of-county follow-up, which required travel. And I would point out that the Montana State Lab was instrumental in helping us close this case. Resulted in 2 in custody at this point. Their quick turnaround and work on DNA and gunshot residue analysis was critical to help us in this. And last is the shooting that took place on the south side. You see we have 2 in custody. Again, significant effort by officers and detectives, 13 search warrants, 14 interviews conducted, multiple phones downloaded and analyzed, heavy support from civilians. We had our phone technicians, our clerical staff, and members from the crime scene, and close coordination and cooperation with prosecutors from Scott's office. The crime lab again was instrumental, helping us with DNA and gunshot analysis. All the investigations were very difficult and complex. A lot of moving parts, and there were little cooperation from suspects and witnesses, and much collaboration was required with all of our partners. And to that point, I want to reiterate and recognize all of the local, state, and federal partners in these situations. Without their support, closing these cases would have been much more difficult. Mr. Twito, Mr. Laslovich, and their respective staffs have worked tirelessly to charge offenders and hold them accountable in their respective jurisdiction, and I appreciate both of their support. On the law enforcement side, with our federal partners, no turf battles here. Everybody came together for the good of the community, and I couldn't be more proud and grateful of the effort. Meticulous investigative efforts resulted in these individuals being brought to justice. Timely and appropriate court filings by Yellowstone County Attorney's Office and the United States Attorney's Office, where appropriate, will hold them accountable. Despite the fact that 2023 showed a 3.2 reduction in all violent crime, and that we are trending in the right direction, that being down, we know that there's still work to do. Public safety and crime prevention remain a top priority of this department. We will continue to aggressively attack dangerous criminal activity and not allow acts to define Billings. In closing, I want to say that the only acceptable number of homicides or any violent crime for that matter is 0. We'll work for that goal, as lofty as it is. My deepest sympathies go out to the loved ones and friends of all victims, and we're grateful that at least in these cases justice was served. Hopefully, the work represented here will serve as a powerful reminder to our community that individuals who commit violent crimes in Billings will be brought to justice and will face consequences. So going back to some of our efforts in 2023, it really falls in line with our strategic goals that we have talked about coming out of the safety levy. You can see the ability to be flexible, to modify our approaches to deal with acute problems as they come up. In this particular case here, you can see that. I won't read to you here, but again, we were able to address the problem very quickly and very efficiently, as evidenced by the arrests that we've made in pretty short turnaround. Street crimes was really saddled with getting a handle on our gang problem, our emerging gang problem, the ones that were here. We have spoken ad nauseum about that, and I'm sure there'll be more discussion. We had essentially retasked that unit. That was not their main job description before we started having issues. And since we did that, which went back to June of '23, you can see the numbers there. We have 40 gang-related arrests, and that's not for gang stuff. That would be gang people involved in other things. Again, we have them identified. They self-identified, but we are paying attention to them. So far, through 2024, same stats, we have 20. So very active, on top of things, proactive, keeping this particular population under control. Recovered 157 firearms, 212 warrants, and they're working 193 cases. And so that's a pretty good caseload for a relatively small unit. That is just one unit. Our detective division, of course, is catching other stuff, and then patrol. They get forgotten in this whole discussion, but if it weren't for their response, how they show up on a call, how they preserve evidence, how they lock scenes down, how they get people identified, is critical to the success on the back end to our detectives and follow-up officers. So great work across the board by members of this department. This is a very, very narrow look at our violent crime numbers. Our annual report should be coming out in a few weeks. I have one person working on what's a pretty significant document, so it takes a little while. But what I want to point out here, we struggle with what are we measuring, because there are several different definitions that the federal government uses, and they all look at different things. So this slide right here, and what we will report out in the future, lists what we're going to count as violent crime. So you can see that list on the side, and it includes misdemeanors and felonies. So in 2023, everything listed in that left category added up to 2908, which is a 3.2% decrease from the previous year. So again, we are going the right direction. We still have work to do. You can see that we have made decreases going back to, our worst year was 21, and so our efforts are paying off at this point. That being said, we are one bad weekend away from having that trend, so it's important for us to stay true to the mission, keep doing what we're doing, keep the pressure on, keep enlisting the help of our federal partners, and then again, I don't need to continually harangue our respective attorneys to prosecute at the highest level. I think they got that. And so that's where we are at with this. That is the end of my prepared remarks. I will certainly answer questions if you like. County Attorney Twito, looks like he brought a whole bunch of stuff for a 45-minute talk. And I would offer open mic to Jesse if he wanted to, but certainly not required on that. So I think before I answer any questions, Scott, if you wanted to talk, you may, and then Jesse same, and then we can do questions.
With regard to the specifics of the cases that the chief just talked about, I just do want to mention, since most of them involve juvenile offenders, we have filed those charges. Those charges are public documents in our district court. They are all slated for what we call transfer hearings back into youth court. So that right now the jurisdiction exists with the district court, and the juveniles, based on their age, will have access to try to get back into youth court if they wish. Now they can stipulate to remain in district court, but we don't know how those are going to shake out because we haven't had any of those transfer hearings yet. The Youth Court Act is Montana law. lays out the procedure that my office is required to follow when we prosecute a juvenile offender, even if we prosecute them in adult court. And so I would be happy to answer any questions about that. The only other comment I'd make is that with regard to the carnival shooting that you just saw in the chief's slide, we actually did, and you can see it in the affidavit, allege gang enhancements in that particular case. And so we plan to, based on that good investigation, we plan to seek those enhancements if we're able to. So, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Go ahead, Lance.
I'll just be brief. Jesse Laslovich, the United States Attorney for the District of Montana. I appreciate very much the partnership with the Chief of the Billings Police Department, as well as with Mr. Twito in the Yellowstone County Attorney's Office. One thing that's common between both of them is they are local officials. Of course, the Chief being the Chief of Billings Police Department and Scott being the Yellowstone County Attorney. I am a federal official, and you heard the Chief's comments that just because we have different jurisdictions, and indeed in all these cases when there's a deliberate homicide here, that is why Scott's office is prosecuting those cases and not ours. But to the extent that there are people who are prohibited persons possessing firearms, that's us. And we are moving mountains in conjunction with our partners to prosecute those people and bring them to justice. If they're killing people, they're going to go to prison. And I know that Scott and his team will ensure that that is the case. If they are possessing the firearm, they will go to federal prison. We are determined about that. So I want the people of Billings to know that even though we have different jurisdictions, we are united in addressing this issue. The people in our office are members of this community. They have family members in this community. They want this community to be as safe as each of you, and we're determined to do just that. And the last thing I would just say is the people of the community are really lucky. We have partners all over the state, local and state partners. No one better than Chief St. John in the Billings Police Department, who I think are the finest the state has to offer. And then of course, Scott Twito, who is an outstanding Yellowstone County attorney, and his team as well. We see these acts happening. We know that people want to be folks to be held accountable, wondering what's going on here, and you've got a ton of people who are marshaling all the resources to hold people accountable. As you've seen, that work will continue, and the United States government will have their backs. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. These arrests had been reported piecemeal over the last few weeks, and I wanted to bring them together and consolidate them to really drive home the point, the significant work that officers, detectives, and our partners did on these specific cases. Again, they're not all of them. We still have some that are outstanding and are working on them. But I think you will find at the end of the year more of them will be closed with the rest, or at least the Scott's office will review than not. So again, the work that's being done by officers and detectives is outstanding. And so that was really the purpose, was to consolidate this message and make sure that the citizens know the good work that's being done by the police department on some really tragic and horrendous crimes. Questions? Which station do you work for, sir?
Were illegal drugs involved as a common denominator in all this?
I would say that they are present, but in the particular cases we're talking about here, not particularly. We saw the gamut from retaliation to revenge to a ripoff, all of those things as motivations. But we all know you have gang activity, you have firearms, you're going to have drugs in there somewhere. And so I wouldn't say it was the driving factor for this, but I'm sure that if we were to look at evidence that they collected, you're going to find drugs. Charlie.
I know you put that one slide up that kind of had some of the changes that you guys had made. You know, obviously after this week, it's been relatively quiet in terms of homicides and stuff like that.
Don't be
Like-
jinxing us now.
Yeah, I know, knock on wood. But can you walk through some of what those changes mean? You know, I think that's what people are most curious of what changes you guys have made.
Yeah, and really, we didn't get any other resources. So it's not like we all of a sudden had an infusion of 15 or 20 new officers and put them to work this problem. What we did is that I have the ability to reassign people temporarily. Happen to have a bona fide gang expert from another department that came to work here. And he's the one that brought it to my attention that we have a bigger issue than I was recognizing, and pointed that out to me. And so that's when we started addressing it, getting people identified, trying to find out who's in what neighborhood, because we're starting to see more territorialism. And for 6 months, that's what was going on. We need to have that information before we can take the enforcement actions. And then we had our spate of violence, unfortunately. Now, before that, of course, you would have a shooting here and a shooting there. It wasn't hitting anybody, but it's all the same people. Scott uses the term nucleus. Oh, he's just going small group. He's got a bigger degree than I do. But we're talking about a very, very small group of people that all know each other and are all causing this problem. The whole time, and they know each other, and they go back and forth, and that's what we're dealing with. But in order to do it properly, efficiently, and legally, we just can't go out there, nilly-willy with stuff. And at one point I said, yeah, scorched earth. That's not effective, and it's not right. So before we were kind of, getting to a point to take some action, then we had our issues here. So we are a part of Project Safe Neighborhood, which is an initiative under the U.S. Attorney, and Jesse is the one ramrodding that. He has made sure that everybody is involved and engaged across that, and so we are able to leverage all of our partners who sit around the table once a month. At least the bosses do, and then the supervisors and unit people, they meet more than that. Sharing intelligence, talking strategies, who's working the same people. You would be surprised that all of the agencies that are sitting at the table are working the same people. So we get all on the same page of stuff and focus our efforts on that. So that's where you see those other jurisdictions. Probation and parole, hundreds of gang members that are in their system. Some on parole. So helping us track them down, find out where they're at, where they're located, and what they're doing. ATF, obviously, they're the gun nexus for us. The prohibited people, the ones that are being stolen. They have some gun shop burglaries where you're stealing stuff. So there's your gun nexus. And Homeland Security was helping us create gang task force officer positions with money and support. So again, everybody rallied to this particular incident. We went out to all of our briefings and we educated our patrol officers on what to look for and what to document. You need to write it down on what you're seeing and understand why that's important to do that. So we up the education there. So again, we go to the identification process, intel sharing, and then the last one there, of course, we're heavily involved with Project Safe Neighborhood, which is a great tool for everybody. Locally, we have more bodies than the feds do, but they got reach, and they got money, and they got stuff. So when you bring that together, pretty formidable force to go on stuff, and that's exactly what happened. And the result on the other side there, street crimes unit worked very closely with everybody on the left column here, and you can see some of the work that they got done. And I also I will also credit our officer that came over and got us going in the right direction and gave us some institutional knowledge on what it is we should be doing. So good on him.
Yeah, and I
Follow
have-
up?
Yeah, sorry, I got one more. I'm glad you pulled this up because I would have forgot those numbers. But you said the 40 gang-related arrests from 2023, those started in about June. Is that what you had said? That was kind of like a half-year total, and so
Yeah.
I guess just making sure that's correct. And then my second question is, is it kind of a mixed bag in the fact that there's 20 so far in 2024? Like in a way, that's a positive that you guys are, making more arrests in these cases, or is it, more, still just kind of showing that it's a live situation?
Both. I mean, we want to deter bad behavior, and I think the message is getting out there that if you're going to be engaged in this type of lifestyle and the stuff that goes along with it, you're going to be held accountable. So the arrests, warrants, the incarceration, the petitions to prosecute as an adult, that sends a message. I don't know if I want to be messing around with that. So those that do, they're getting picked up, and we got 20 of them. But if we can deter, stop that behavior, and we're good there. So a little bit of both your questions. So.
Yeah.
Ma'am?
You mentioned it earlier with one of the pieces that there's an increasing impact on digital footprints on these cases. How is the department going to navigate that?
Okay, so I got one more time louder, please.
No worries. So in these cases, there's an increasing impact of digital footprints.
Oh, yeah.
How is the department going to navigate that?
Well, we pay a significant amount of money for our technological capabilities. And as you're well aware, anytime you're into anything technological, they're coming back next year with the newest widget. So it's an expensive prospect to be able to have the equipment, have the authorization, have the training, and have the staffing that are good at what they're doing, and we have all of that. We also, again, leverage our friends on the federal side because they have additional tools, additional stuff to help us out with that. But you're right, it's very expensive and it's very time consuming, but that's what we deal with now, is phones, digital evidence, that type of stuff. And so times have changed, most definitely, but those are something we always account for in our budget, the increases in the technological requirements that we have, and they're significant. They are. But we would be almost totally ineffective if we did not have any capabilities in that area. And fortunately, we do.
I had a question more for Twito. You said something about the carnival arrest you enabled. What was it, the gang?
There's gang enhancement language under state law which we use in that case.
And what exactly does that mean? How much help does that provide for you guys in those?
It provides potential enhanced penalties for the activity. And so we're required to prove the certain elements that exist within those enhancing acts. And if we do, then we get an additional sort of add-on for potential penalty exposure.
Is that part of how you're able to then charge them as adults in these cases more? Or?
No. Under the Youth Court Act, with regard to the carnival shooting and those charges, those are all enumerated offenses in the Youth Court Act that allow us to charge them as adults. And then it just depends on the severity of the offense. Obviously, deliberate homicide is a very severe offense, the most severe offense, and so it allows us to charge a juvenile up to a certain age in adult court. They still have protections, however, because they would still have protections of that transfer that I talked about, where the district court does an evaluation, determines whether they should remain in district court, where they would be treated like an adult with all those procedural protections. And then even if we do that, there's some argument, there's protection on the end called the Criminally Convicted Youth Act that might be available to them as well. So they still would be charged as adults if that court keeps them there, but they still have added protections because of their age. But the gang enhancement has nothing to do with that. In fact, I know a lot about the Youth Court Act. I've been dealing with the Youth Court Act for 27 years, but I actually went to the legislature last go round to change some of those enumerations and enhancements because we didn't have gang enhancements when we made the Youth Court Act 25 years ago. So it actually doesn't even show up in the section that allows for that transfer.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, ma'am.
So yesterday Attorney General Garland came to the state and he said that he plans to put more funds into law enforcement to fight violent crimes like this. Does the department have plans to apply for some of those grant programs?
Yeah, certainly. We're always looking for grants to augment our capability, whether it is additional officers or programs. There are a lot out there, but they're really designed right now for other entities to run them. People more involved in the education, prevention, intervention side of the shop for violence, for violent crimes. That's not what we do. Although, you know, we do need to pay attention to that. So if, you know, the one always comes up where you can get officers and you just have to pick the cost up in a few years. Waiting for that to open, it just hasn't right yet. Last year in 2022, we received $2 million in grant money from our federal partners and other donations. So we contribute to our operations, not just standing in front of the council with our hat in our hand. So same thing here. I look forward to what we get. I think the Attorney General was really talking more about the violence on the reservations and getting help there. That is a whole other press conference, so I would have to defer to Jesse on that one. Woefully understaffed, and they've got some serious problems. And unfortunately, some of that manifests itself in Billings. Because of our proximity to the reservation, coming and going, and we get some of that. So that's what I took from the Attorney General's comments. Any other questions before I close this up? Well, thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate it. And until next time, thank you.